We ready to go? Okay. All right, I call this meeting of the Public Safety Committee to order. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, for roll call, everyone is present. We got to do the thing here. So this agenda was posted in the office of the county clerk on the 11th day of September 2020. Notice was sent to the West Bend Daily News, Express News, WIBD, WMBZ Radio, WTKM Radio, My Community Now, Hartford Times Press, Kewaskum Statesman, Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. Okay, I'll accept a motion to accept the consent agenda. Motion by Supervisor Gonnerings, second by Supervisor Marquardt. Any questions or comments on the consent agenda? Okay, all in favor of accepting the consent agenda, raise your hand. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Okay, first discussion item, staff acknowledgement for Correction Officer Carrie A. Vikovich Conan and Detective Don Kapla from the Sheriff's Office. And Carrie, if I mispronounced your last name, I apologize. All right, so I think Sheriff Schulteis will handle that one, right?
Carrie, if I can have you come up, please. Well, good morning, everyone. So this particular incident that I'm referring to in the jail just came to my attention. It happened back in January, but it's significant enough that I thought that public safety should know about it. So yeah, I'm Sheriff Schulteis. Obviously, this is Corrections Officer Carrie Vikovich or Cohen, right? Vikovich Cohen. Okay. So on January 18th, 2020, Officer Carrie Vikovich Cohen was assigned to booking when she came across an inmate in his cell exhibiting signs of impairment. So she's in the booking area, and there's a receiving area after people are booked in. A line of how many cells are there? 8. Okay, so it's a very, very busy area. We book in 4,500 people a year, so there's a lot going on in that particular area every single day. Whereas Carrie proceeded to get the subject's attention, and while interacting with the subject, noticed that he had contraband on his bunk. And whereas Carrie noted the appearance of contraband that was a contact case, and due to her training experience, noticed it was smuggled within the subject. So this would have been after the booking process? Okay, so he'd been with us for a couple hours then. Whereas Carrie took possession of the contraband and noted that it contained a white powdery substance and turned over to deputies, who then sent it into the Wisconsin Crime Laboratory, where it tested positive for fentanyl and heroin. And whereas fentanyl and heroin are dangerous and highly potent narcotic drugs, fentanyl being 50 to 100 times more potent than heroin and readily absorbed into the human body. Whereas Officer Carrie Vikovich, alertness, attention to detail, and diligence in the performance of her duties to maintain the safety and security has helped prevent a dangerous narcotic from being further used by the subject or exposed to other occupants of the jail, including staff, and in doing so has demonstrated an excellent example to her peers by exhibiting a leadership direction of the Sheriff's Office and providing a safe and secure community. Now, therefore, be resolved that Carrie is hereby acknowledged for her professionalism and her dedicated to duty at today's date. It's you can have all the technology you want in the jail. I mean, we have we have the body scanners and urine tests and all sorts of tests, but it comes down to the human inputs and human observation that makes a huge difference. And I credit our staff to be able to do that. It sounds like a small amount of narcotics that were brought into jail, but that small amount can be fatal. And so I commend our staff for being that alert. So I want to thank you very much. How long you been with the sheriff's office?
It'll be 13 years. in November.
Okay, so obviously a veteran, and so we obviously appreciate her experience. So thank you very much. And the next acknowledgement, Detective Capella, if you could come on up. So this one's a little more complex. So I'm gonna kind of veer off from how we normally do things. I have the acknowledgement, but I want to actually read a memo that was submitted to me because it's really more than just Detective Capella. It's really the entire department that that worked together in this particular case. And I just kind of wanted to recognize not only Detective Capella's accomplishments in this, but the entire department's. So this starts out, the purpose of this memo is to acknowledge the outstanding investigation and subsequent arrest in the overdose death of a victim, which occurred on October 2019 in the village of Richfield. Detective Don Capella was the lead investigator in this case and displayed tenacity, thoroughness, passion, knowledge, and persistence. This, coupled with the teamwork and collaboration of many others at the Washington County Sheriff's Office, resulted in the successful investigation, which recently concluded with the arrest of an individual who had sold the illegal drugs to the victim that resulted in his death. This case was complex, and the investigators encountered many obstacles along their way, and their resilience proved triumphant. So it all started on October 26, 2019, almost a year ago, at 12:56 a.m. Detective Capella was called to on-duty status for a death investigation. So he's at home. The response to the pages comes in. The initial information revealed that the victim was found by a friend who was the 911 caller. She reported that she had talked to the deceased on the telephone early in the day and was dropped off at the house sometime before 8 p.m. so she could pick up some items. She found him passed out upon arrival, but said he was breathing. At around 8 p.m., she said he woke up for a bit. She reported that around midnight, she checked for a pulse and found that he was still breathing and went to bed. She found him not breathing and called 911 at 12:56 a.m. She then began providing inconsistent statements about the hours that led up to the 911 call and became uncooperative. The victim was found deceased by the first arriving deputies. The next day, a broken window was found at the victim's house, indicating someone had broken in after law enforcement left the scene. A small amount of blood was located, and the Detective Capella was able to send it in for testing. The Detective Capella was also able to review surveillance video from the house, which showed the impaired victim inside the house as well as the 911 caller. The autopsy found no medical reason for the death, but there was an initial positive test for heroin in the urine, and this can be consistent with an overdose death. As the investigation progressed, numerous search warrants were conducted by Detective Capella, Detective Killey, Deputy Rodish began assisting with researching social media and identified several acquaintances as well as securing pertinent surveillance video from the areas. Investigator Glyman, who's with us here today, also secured pertinent surveillance footage. Detective Capella was able to secure video from a local gas station as well as from a traffic camera that showed the 911 caller coming back towards the scene after law enforcement cleared the residence. Capella also was able to get into the victim's Facebook page after meeting with the family and coming up with possible passwords. And through that, social media account, several pertinent communications were discovered, which the 911 caller and the victim talked about drug transactions, including on the evening in question. Some of the messages were also written to show that the 911 caller and the deceased were not together on the night of his death. This did not match with the other evidence, and it was quickly identified as an attempt to cover up the 911 caller that had been at the house. This was because the 911 caller was not actually allowed at the residence. Detective Capella and Detective Killey were able to locate and interview a person who was involved in the incident. From them, they were able to verify that the victim had driven down to Milwaukee with the 911 caller. He drove them back to the victim's residence and dropped the 911 caller off several hundred feet before the house to avoid being on camera. He also reported that around 6:51 p.m., he began getting messages from the 911 caller reporting that there was an emergency involving the victim. As the investigation continued, Detective Capella was able to identify a suspect in the city of Milwaukee who had a significant criminal history, including the fact that at one time he was on bond for selling illegal drugs. Detective Franco was also here today, and Detective Capella discovered the suspect was on electronic monitoring system in Milwaukee. Detective Capella was then able to obtain the GPS coordinates and verify that the suspect had been in the same location as our 911 caller on several occasions, back alleys, including on the date of death. Johnson, the victim was also shown to be in that area. Detective Kaplan collaborated with the Washington County Sheriff's Office multi-jurisdictional drug unit to set up surveillance on the 911 caller. And ultimately, Deputy Herbst arrested the 911 caller on an unrelated matter, and detectives were able to gain her cooperation. She was able to identify the person who sold them the drugs. At this time, Detective Kaplan learned that the medical examiner was not willing to rule a death, a drug overdose at that time. It was based on the small amount of heroin in the victim's urine and the lack of it in the blood. The medical examiner indicated she would be sending it out for further testing. In the end, the death was ruled a drug overdose. The victim's blood had high levels of a new synthetic drug known as, help me with the pronunciation. All right, there it is. The substance is extremely potent and has just recently surfaced. So it's a kind of a brand new synthetic drug that has recently surfaced in this area. The substance coupled with a small amount of heroin was sufficient to show that the case and the cause of death met the state statute criteria for a reckless homicide charge. Based on the totality of this investigation, Kaplan was able to get an arrest warrant issued on the suspect for first-degree reckless homicide, as well as 4 counts of felony bail jumping. Kaplan was then contacted by the ATF, who indicated they had a criminal case on him and would be arresting him. The ATF was later able to obtain evidence of their search warrant that linked the 911 caller to the suspect on the day of the death as well. A case like this requires a lead detective that is dedicated, organized, motivated, like Detective Kaplan, to succeed. It requires a great amount of assistance and teamwork from others like Detective Killy, Detective Franco, Investigator Glomman, and Deputy Rodich. It requires good evidence handling and collection like Detective Williams and Investigator Giese were able to provide. Most importantly, it requires all divisions of the agency to come together and work as one, including Patrol's initial response, the Detective Bureau's prolonged investigation, the drug units assisting with surveillance, and Deputy Hertz making the arrest of the 911 caller. Everyone that worked on this case should be commended. In particular, I commend Detective Kaplan for the leading this complex 10-month investigation to a successful conclusion, while upholding the Washington County Sheriff's leadership direction to the highest level. So this was a memo written to me from Lieutenant Temps. He runs the Detective Bureau. So based on that, then I have the shortened version of the actual acknowledgement. So whereas on October 26, 2019 at 12:56 a.m., Detective Don Kaplan was summoned to on-duty status to investigate the death of a 23-year-old Village of Richfield man. Whereas Detective Don Kaplan, as the lead investigator, displayed tenacity, thoroughness, and went involved into a complex 10-month drug overdose investigation. This investigation involved both heroin and a new synthetic drug. Whereas Don Kaplan's dedication to the case recently concluded with the arrest of an individual that sold the illegal drugs to the victim on charges including first-degree reckless homicide. This is one of the first prosecutions of an overdose death related to this new dangerous synthetic drug in this region and state. Whereas this case demonstrated how all divisions of this agency came together to work as one in a unified mission to hold an individual accountable that recklessly contributed to the death of a Washington County citizen. This mission also brought a certain amount of closure to the grieving family. Now, therefore, be resolved that Washington County is a safer place due to the diligence, commitment, and professionalism of Detective Kaplan. So thank you very much, Don. How long have you been with us?
I'm in my
20 days. So obviously a veteran is an asset. I'm very proud of our investigative division. It's only a group of 7 detectives, but they do a tremendous amount of work and very, very complex stuff. And I just thought it was important that you guys know about it. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Sheriff Schulteis. Next agenda item is mutual aid requests for civil disturbances. And that'll also be Sheriff Schulteis presenting.
So this will be relatively quick. I just really wanted to make sure that the public safety commission knew my perspective on civil disturbances, both in county and other county. We're very fortunate in Washington County that in at least the sheriff's office jurisdiction, we have not had any formalized protesting going on that I'm aware of at all. A little one-off, but nothing significant at all. There have been a couple of cases of some protests within municipalities within Washington County, West Van Hartford, Germantown, Wascom. Most of, basically, the vast majority of them have been relatively peaceful. There's been some tempers flare, but it's really we've not experienced what other areas of the state have for sure. I want just to let you know when those municipalities within Washington County call for assistance, the sheriff's office does everything possible to assist them. The one, probably the most significant one that we had in Germantown, if you're familiar with the Walla Tulsa shootings, the officer that was involved in the 3 fatal shootings, and the one that is being investigated currently, and is probably very close to being announced if the officer's going to be charged or not, if it's justified or not. But the police chief of that municipality, Walla Tulsa, actually resides in Germantown. So there's been some protesting at his residence. So Germantown has asked us for help on several occasions, and it's painful to my budget, but I'm committed anytime they ask for help like that we will send down. We typically will call in shifts early, hold shifts over, because like a municipality like that might have 4 or 5 officers working at a given time, which can easily get overrun. So I just want to let you know, sometimes our overtime budget will show that, but it's important to me that we provide support for those municipalities. We suspect that, I don't know time frame, but we suspect that announcement for the Walla Tulsa shooting will be made, and we want to be prepared for that. So we actually have some contingency plans in place that we're going to be working very closely with Germantown on. So that is for in-county stuff. And the other stuff, the other one that I want to just briefly touch on is the out-of-county, which is a little more, I have a harder time getting my hands around the out-of-county stuff. So Wisconsin has it's called Emergency Police Services. It's a state organization that coordinates statewide mutual aid for problematic areas. And over the past several months, we've been getting a lot of requests from Kenosha, obviously, Milwaukee initially when the custody death happened in Minnesota, there was a request. In Madison, it seems to get those requests all the time. Fairly frequent. I'm a little hesitant to send out our assets out to the west of Madison. We've done it on occasion. We've done it much more often in the southeastern portion of Wisconsin. So during we sent our tactical assets, including our Bearcat and some SWAT operators, and from both our department in Germantown, I believe, down to Milwaukee early on. There's a couple of days right after the officer-involved shooting in Kenosha, we sent down our Bearcat. I think it was 4 operators from our department, 2 from Germantown, on 2 separate nights. It was Tuesday and Wednesday. It was actually one of the days that they had the shooting down there, the civilian shooting. Our Bearcat was only a couple of blocks away from it, matter of fact. But the reason I realize Kenosha is kind of far from Washington County, but what I ask you to consider and keep in mind is that the region for EPS, our Emergency Police Service District, runs from Ozaki, Washington, south to Kenosha. So it includes Waukesha, Milwaukee, Lucene, Kenosha. So that's one EPS district. And quite honestly, that I doubt that we're going to reimburse for that overtime cost. But what I have to always keep in mind is that if we ever need help, I call on that EPS district for help, and then they return the favor. So this is dating back a long, long time ago, but we had a SWAT incident up in the town of Wascom, I think in 1997. And it was a high profile, we had 2 officers that were shot. One was shot, one was shot at. And we needed an armored vehicle. There wasn't no one had them in the state at that time, except for Kenosha Sheriff's Office. They had a peacekeeper, and they actually shipped it up all the way from Kenosha to help us out back in the 90s. So that was kind of in the back of my head that we need to support each other, especially in that EPS district. So if you get any questions of, why is the sheriff sending assets down there, that's the reason. So, happy to answer any questions. I just thought you guys should know that.
Okay, thank you, Sheriff Schulteis. I'm gonna make a quick comment. The mutual aid that you're demonstrating, I think that's important right now. We look at the next couple months with the election. There's the potential for a lot of turmoil. I hope that all the municipal districts in Washington County are ready to render that kind of mutual aid for each other as well. If there's a problem in one of our communities, I think the residents of that community want to look out their window and see law enforcement. And they may not care if it's a brown shirt or a blue shirt. They may not care if the patch on the shoulder is for their municipal district or another one. They don't want to see anarchists and domestic terrorists rioting and destroying their city. So I think the example you're setting is good, and I hope all of our law enforcement within our county are going to follow that example if we have a significant problem, and really pull together to make sure we keep our county and all of the municipalities within our county safe.
We really have a great working relationship with all the chiefs of police and all of the law enforcement agencies. So yeah, I have no doubt that
Yep.
you're absolutely right. Doesn't matter what the polyester. I got a couple of phone calls from Village Germantown residents thanking the sheriff's office for having they saw the sheriff's squad and they're very appreciative of that. So
Yep.
It's a two-way street.
Yep. All right. Thank you. Other questions and comments? Supervisor Creefo?
No, we've talked about this before, Sheriff. If we get a request from a jurisdiction that practices the stand down technique for police officers, I really don't want to see our officers being placed in a situation where they cannot respond appropriately. And the level of incidents of injuries of officers or it is unduly increased. So I would expect, as you did in one incident, I don't recall it offhand, Milwaukee. Yeah.
That was after the riding down there and the administration down there didn't want the officers using gas or any type of projectiles against the peaceful protesters.
Mhm.
Don't use it against people protesting. But you're exactly right. I was very uncomfortable putting our officers in that position.
Yeah.
Even though I didn't formally commit to sending this, I verbally done, we didn't set an agreement. But yeah, I backed our officers.
Yeah. Well, I heartily agree with that policy. And I would expect that every time you're requested that there are the parameters that your officers are going to be involved with and that proper police techniques and crowd control are utilized. Otherwise, I don't think we should place our officers in jeopardy. Thanks.
Go ahead, Supervisor Markwart.
Thank you. Sheriff, just to follow up on that, when our officers are placed under, in other places, whose command are they under? The local?
It's typically they're working on the authority of the jurisdiction that is doing the request. So we literally, if it's out of county.
Yeah.
We're basically becoming employees of that jurisdiction for workers' comp purposes. And we're still the county still paying wages. But there's usually there's a defined mission, and we know what the objectives are. Like the Kenosha one, I was extremely comfortable with because I knew that the game plan was, I don't want to say being more aggressive, but being more assertive down there and not being quite as reactive. So as long as the mission parameters are in place, but ultimately it is the home jurisdiction that we want to show.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to our first action item, which is the outlay for the clerk of courts. I need a motion to approve this. Moved by Supervisor Gonnering, second. Second by Supervisor Berg. Okay, and I know our clerk of courts, Teresa Russell, she's not able to be here today. Are there questions at all about this item? Yep. Go ahead, Supervisor Markort.
In the recommendation, I was questioning whether that was a typo or not. The amount of 55,000 and the way it's worded just leads me to wonder if that should be 15 like above. Otherwise, I wasn't following
Good
the
morning.
the amounts.
So I'm the finance director. I worked with Teresa a little bit on this report,
Yep.
and was gonna be here in case she wasn't. So the cost to the county is the $50,000. The state is chipping in a portion of the project as well for their components of it. Essentially, what we're paying for is creating a break point in between our current AV system to allow the state's equipment to be installed. So the state's gonna cover the cost of their equipment. We're covering the cost of creating that break, including the necessary cabling and some pieces of equipment to do that. So the cost that for us is about to be 50,000. We don't have any final quotes yet for the actual cabling, but the rest of the funds will be covered by the state.
Okay. I followed that, but then when
Okay.
I got to the recommendation, it said approve up to 55,000
Oh, I see that, yes.
for each of the 6 rooms.
So I believe that's a typo, but my conversation with Teresa, and it may be 55,000 in total, just, she may built in a $5,000 contingency,
Okay.
which we normally sometimes do on a $50,000 project. That'd be about 10%, which would make sense.
Okay.
I don't believe it'd be 55,000 for each room, 55,000 in total.
Yeah, so the word each probably should be removed.
Correct,
And
yeah, I
then
would,
there's the,
yeah, so when you guys make your formal action today, I would phrase it to exclude that word each.
Do you want to make a motion to that effect?
I will move to amend that and remove the word each of those 3 words, basically. So 4, 6 commissioner hearing and circuit rooms in the recommendation.
Okay, do I have a second for that motion? Okay, Supervisor Millicent, did I say that right? Milliken, okay. So Supervisor Milliken seconds. Any discussion on the amendment? Okay, voting on the amendment. All those in favor, raise your hands. Okay, any opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously. Okay, more discussion on the outlay? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously. All right, next item is the 2021 Clerk of Courts budget. I think Margie, did you want to come up to speak to that at all? Yeah, it might be good since we got a bunch of budgets for you to stay up here for a bit, yeah.
Okay, so for all the budgets that you guys see today, the summary sheets are included, and we normally work with the departments to highlight any summary of significant changes on the bottom, expenses and in revenues. And then the departments also provide some highlights of the past year and some goals for the next year. So I'll answer any questions that you guys have and any of those significant changes. And if there's something I can't answer, I'll follow up with the department and get something back to you.
Okay, any questions about the budget for the Clerk of Courts? Okay, not seeing any, I'll take a motion to approve the budget. Moved by Supervisor Gonnering, second. Supervisor Berg. All right, all those in favor of passing the 2021 clerk of court budget signify by raising your hand. Okay, motion passes unanimously. All right, next item is the 2021 district attorney budget. So is there, I see Rob Benson here. Is there a second microphone that he can come to?
I can
Or-
sit down if you guys need me. I can. sit
All
back
right,
up, but-
we can do.
Wait a minute.
Well, come on, guys, don't all jump up at once here.
I tell you what, I'll come sit over here if you need me to interject. I'll-
Okay, sounds good.
Hopefully between Margie and I, if you have any questions, we can answer them.
Yep, okay, questions for our district attorney on his budget?
Thank you.
Okay, well, you might get off easy here. All right, motion to accept the 2021 district attorney budget, Supervisor Gonnering. Second, Supervisor Milliken. All those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Okay, Supervisor Berg, did you?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep, okay, all right. So are you voting in favor or opposed? In favor, okay. So unanimous. All right, thank you.
Thank you all very
Yep.
much. I appreciate your support.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you, Margie.
Oh, sure, that old excuse, my laptop froze. All right. All right, next one is the 2021 emergency management budget.
Good morning. Yeah. Same thing. Any questions? My budget's very status quo. There's really no changes to it at all. And it's pretty small too. So
Questions about our emergency management budget? Okay, motion by Supervisor Gonnering to accept, second by Supervisor Milliken. All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay, any opposed? Nope, budget passes unanimously.
wonderful. Thank you.
So we're moving through these pretty quickly. All right, next one is 2021 medical examiner budget. All right, Margie, I think you get this one.
So no significant items in this budget either. The biggest question that we normally have in preparing this budget is just our contract with Waukesha County and the increase that may be built into that. So we built in a 2.5% expected increase for the 21 budget, which is about $5,000. Otherwise, nothing significant. We did increase some revenues based on the number of cremations, but otherwise pretty much status quo.
Just so I know, with what you built in for the Waukesha County part, is that an estimate or do we know that's the cost at this point?
I'm not aware that we've gotten our final number. We do.
Okay, but
We're gonna remain at that number in the budget, just in case we have a special toxicology things that need to happen. As you heard, one detective Kaplan had his commendation, that medication, find that for that synthetic, actually took a considerable amount of time, considerable expense. So if we have something like that going forward, we need to have a little bit of extra money built in, so. all that.
Yep. All right, thank you. Yep. Other questions about the budget for the medical examiner? Okay, motion to accept the budget. Supervisor Gonnering, Supervisor Marquardt, just to do somebody different. Sorry. All right, all those in favor, raise your hand. Okay, and I don't see anybody opposed then, so motion passes unanimously. All right. Next up is the sheriff's budget. So I think Marty's at a microphone ready for that one too. Questions on the sheriff's budget, or actually, let's start out with comments from Margie or Sheriff Schulteis.
Sure. So what I'll say is that during the county executive's address to you about the budget he indicated that the vast majority of the construction is in the sheriff's office. And I don't want to give the impression that we're expanding our services. Really, this budget is maintaining the status quo. It's just all of our costs go up extra a lot. We are we're not the largest budget in the county, but we are the largest tax levy portion of it. So, and that's because we do not have as many revenues coming in as other agencies. So we are by far the highest tax burden as far as tax levy dollars in the county. But just to give you an example, our salaries went up about 300,000 is the total salaries. And as people taking on health insurance, that's a significant portion of it. We had about $88,000 go up in our medical health contract with ACH, our jail providers. So it's a lot of it is just the increase in expenses versus expanding our services. So that summary of changes kind of highlights most of the significant changes. I'd be happy to talk about any particular ones of them, but I just didn't want to give maybe the impression was that we're more and more and more. We're actually just trying to maintain the status quo. We've added a little bit of capability with some new equipment for our dive team and our detective bureau, but overall, it's really maintaining the status.
Okay, questions about the sheriff's budget? Yeah, we're an easy group, so I will say this, the budgets are laid out real nice the way they are with the summary of significant changes. Makes it easy to understand exactly what's going on. So, yep. So seeing no questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve the sheriff's budget. All right, Supervisor Goddard, and then second by Supervisor Markort. All those in favor, raise your hand. All right, passes unanimously. Okay, our next item is the law enforcement scholarship. And so I'm going to turn it over to Marty for this.
So this, I'm just really bringing in front of public safety to see if you have interest in doing this at all. If you would rather have the sheriff's office do it completely, that's quite all right. I just wanted to give public safety the opportunity. But I was approached by the owner of Five Corners Jeep Dodge in Ozaki County. And he wanted to do 4 scholarships to each county for individuals doing undergraduate studies to get into public safety and law enforcement. The tie to Washington County is the owner of Five Corners actually lives outside of Slinger. He's very, very active in the community, part of the Slinger school board, I believe. And Ozaki County already actually did the 4 scholarships. And the criteria that both of our jurisdictions were using is that the individuals pursuing a course of study in criminal justice, they're in this case a Washington County resident, 2020 high school graduate, have a minimum GPA of 2.5, and no negative law enforcement contacts. We have them submitted high school transcripts and wrote 1 letter of recommendation with a very small essay. And so the question that I'm posing to public safety is, and just so you're aware, the money, we are not going to be the trustee for any of the money. There's no money is being filtered through the county. We are just, Mr. Rainer simply wanted the sheriff's office or this committee to assist in picking the kids. We'll probably set up, if you want to become involved, we could probably do a check presentation here at some further meeting, some board meeting, something to that effect. But my question to the county board or the public safety rather is just if you want to be a part of the evaluation process, looking at the applications, and coming up with a recommendation, or just like to have the sheriff's office. Ozaki County, the sheriff, their command staff did it all, but I thought I would just throw it out to you guys.
All right, thank you, Sheriff Schulteis. Questions or comments or thoughts on this?
I will say we have not had a ton of applicants yet.
Okay.
Due Friday.
Yep.
So we have some applicants, but not a whole lot.
Yeah, okay. All right. Yep, go ahead, Supervisor.
Are you guys are gonna be making the choices then? The applications will be routed through you and you'll make the choice of the individuals based on a minor kind of background check?
Right, yeah. So I was either gonna do that or have you guys do the evaluations.
Yeah, I would think, it should be run through your office It's something that should be done in-house. I don't foresee any real negative connotations of it, especially since you're not getting a rash of applications where you're probably not gonna have a lot to pick from. Unfortunately, in our culture right now, the way things are rolling against police, which is unfortunate. Yeah, if you can get good candidates through there, I think it's a great opportunity to try to pick those out. Do you have anybody also that, like some of your school resource officers or, and maybe direct some students that may have an aptitude for law enforcement to maybe start thinking about this program?
Pretty much 4 major school districts.
Yeah.
I was gonna kind of have each school district have one of the scholarships and let them kind of come up with recommendations. And I get a whole lot of warm reception to that. So I went back to Mr. Sheriff's office.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you.
I saw a few people pointing like they wanted Marty to handle it, so. Yep, yep. I do, either way, I definitely want to thank the owner of Five Corners Dodge for supporting law enforcement in this way. It is important that we have good law enforcement officers and that our community shows support for those. So this is leadership, and I want to thank that owner, and hopefully he sees this and knows that we appreciate this. So, any other comments about the possibility of this committee reviewing the applications versus Sheriff Schulteis reviewing them? Okay. Okay, sounds like the consensus is that we appreciate it, but we'll let you pick out the people who you think are most recruitable for you to award those scholarships for. So, yep.
Do you want the presentation to take place here or? The last one was done at 5 Corners. I mean, you can do that.
You know, I'm wondering about Five Corners. That might be really nice as a way to recognize this gentleman's. Yeah. But, yep, let's go to Supervisor Gannering.
Yeah, I think it would be a really nice thing to have it in front of the whole quorum of supervisors. What it's gonna do is gonna give a little credit to Five Corners and that there, and it's also gonna open up, I think, the eyes of a lot of other businesses within our community that maybe, hey, maybe we should get involved with something like this. I mean, a little more advertisement never hurts than that. And if the scholarships can get larger in both Ozaki and Washington counties, maybe there'll be more kids that'll be getting involved finally. I mean, this is a rotten year for that. I hate to say it that way because of all the great publicity, but I think they're all wrong, these people in that, but that's up to them, But I think I would like it in front of there because of that. If we can get one more person, one more, Five Corners GMC type thing, why not?
And I think it's interesting in our society. If you were to watch the news, you would think that almost everybody in society hates police right now. And yet, I think it's the exact opposite. And I think the more we project that, the more we can combat that narrative. So, if we want to do it in front of the whole county board and maybe have the owner of Five Corners be here for that, I like that idea a lot. I think the owner should get recognition. He's supporting our law enforcement. He's doing a great thing. So I like that idea a lot. Thank you, Supervisor Gannering, for suggesting that. Yep. Other thoughts? Supervisor Marquardt?
I was just curious, Sheriff, about when this scholarship was established or notified of it, because I didn't notice at first that it was due right away at this Friday already. I mean, it just seems.
Maybe about a month and a half ago.
Okay, but again, school just started again, so.
Well, it's supposed to be for the graduating. The intent was, the criteria that Ozaki County used is that you were graduating high school going into college. So it'd be
So it's new, new college kids this fall. Okay. Cause I mean, the notice to the school districts, it would just seem like, to try and, fit that with kids that have interest would seem to need to be a little sooner. But yeah, I'm all on board with, trying to encourage, participation in those careers. I mean, when I was on the board, school board, I encouraged kids to start thinking much earlier than they do about what career path they're looking at, and I think incentivizing that is always a good thing.
Yeah, it came up very quick that we offered this and now we got rolling, so we kind of condense it down.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I don't think we need to vote on anything on this. So seeing no further comments, let's move on to the next thing, which is our resolution for funding for law enforcement equipment. Need a motion to approve that? Supervisor Gannering again, and Supervisor Milliken. So, all right, discussion or questions on this? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. Okay, motion passes unanimously. Last item here, next meeting date is scheduled for Wednesday, October 21st at 7:30 a.m. And we are hereby adjourned. Okay. Okay.